Paula. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of San Miguel de Allende. Whether you came in on dainty little toes, sprinted in, walked in clodhoppers like me, or rolled in, you are welcome here. Whatever your gender identity, whomever you love, whatever your religious background or lack thereof, you are welcome here. You can bring your whole self here. We recognize we are on the lands of the Chichimeca, Nahua, and Otomi people and respect the many gifts they have given us. I'm Nora Cohen, your service leader today. I'm especially delighted to introduce our minister for today, Reverend Jill McAllister. She is my minister in Corvallis, Oregon, and she is beloved in the community and in the congregation. She's going to be talking about the meeting of two giants, Thich Nhat Hanh and Martin Luther King. After the service, those on Zoom are invited to stay connected and visit with others in the main room for discussion. Those who are with us at the Aldea here can have cookies and coffee in the back of the room here. And please, we need more cookies. Thank you. We have these visitors with us today. Would you please stand so we can acknowledge you? Joan Minsky from Chicago. Marcia Biller from San Diego. Drew Massicott from San Diego. Jessica and Alan from Charlotte, North Carolina. Kathy Stennett from Duluth, Minnesota. Whoa. Gail Anderson from San Diego. We have a whole San Diego contingent. George Aronson from New York City. Leona from Ogden, from Meaford, Ontario, Canada. Meaford, sorry, thank you. And Jesse Wilson, also from Ontario, Owen Sound. And Lori Sampson from Austin, Texas. And do we have any other visitors here with us today that didn't have a chance to share? Would you please rise so we can greet you after the service? Wow, thank you. Thank you. Okay. Next week, next Sunday the 24th, is the 2024 UUFSMA annual meeting, which will be held at 12 noon following the service. The meeting will be in person at the Aldea and on Zoom. If you are a member and haven't received emails with the agenda and information, please contact Susan, uufsma.secretary@gmail.com by Friday the 22nd. And we are really blessed to have a presentation by Elizabeth Menton, who is here from the Getty Art Museum in Los Angeles as a gift to the foundation. She is going to be presenting at Casa de la Cultura on Mesones from 4 to 5:30, and you can get your tickets at a bargain price, 300 pesos, over at the Social Justice Foundation table. It's going to be on Wednesday the 20th, and you can get your tickets here now. We do record our Sunday in-person services. So you can go to the website UUFSMA.org and click on services. And while you're on that website, check out the various events sponsored by the fellowship and information on how to become a member. So now we are going to welcome Jill McAllister, Reverend Jill, and we're going to join our voices together in singing "Come and Go With Me to This Land."
After we do the opening words.
Oh, great. Yeah, after opening
After
words.
the opening words, yes. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you all for coming this morning. Once again, we join ourselves in dedication to high ideals, to loving kindness and compassion, to inner nobility and steadiness, to right relations created by freedom and responsibility, to ever-increasing justice and peace. We gather in gratitude for each breath we breathe, for the companionship of each other, for the gift of this day. And we light the chalice with these words from the Reverend Bill Singford, the former president of the UUA and former minister of the First Unitarian Church in Portland, Oregon. May the light of this chalice encourage us to keep moving, to keep learning, for there is so much to do. We have only begun to imagine justice and mercy. May the light of this chalice help us stay focused on a vision of what can be. May it open our hearts to more stories and more truths. May we see in that hope courage and a voice to work for the constant rebirth of freedom and justice. May it be so. I invite you to rise in body or spirit if you would like to join in singing this song, "Come and Go With Me to That Land." It's an old spiritual from the United States. You are welcome to clap if you are into that. I am. So, but I'll sing from here, I'll lead from here, and I will clap. So I invite you to join me. Paula's going to play through once.
Standing for our unique covenant. And Paula Torrendot is going to join me and do it in the Spanish. So, we respect the interdependent web of life and work for a just and peaceful world. We encourage the search for truth and meaning, strive for compassion in our relationships, and seek values that will benefit our lives and the lives of others. This is our covenant.
Respetamos todos los estilos de vida dentro de su red interdependiente y trabajamos por un mundo justo y pacífico. Alentamos la búsqueda de la verdad y la comprensión total. Nos esforzamos por mantener compasión en nuestras relaciones y buscamos valores que beneficien nuestras vidas y las vidas de los demás. Este es nuestro convenio.
Please welcome our minister, Tom Rosiello.
Just one. Good morning. As Kathy told you, I'm the minister of this fellowship. For those who don't know me, at first I'd like to add my welcome to our guest minister, the Reverend McAllister. This fellowship is the beneficiary of not only wonderful services provided by many guest ministers, but by partnerships that often develop with their congregations in the United States and in Canada, some of which partner with us in doing the work of social justice in Mexico. We hope that Jill's visit with us today and with our much-loved Nora Cohen's membership, not just in our fellowship, but in Corvallis, Washington, we might build a closer connection with them too. Each week in our service, we provide members and friends the opportunity to share significant milestones, joys, sorrows, and concerns with their community. We do so with the knowledge that in beloved community, what touches one affects us all, and with a firm commitment to be there for each other in good times and in bad. We also do so knowing, as it's written in the Talmud, that when we share a joy, the happiness can be doubled, and when we share a pain, the sorrow cut in half. Our first candle is lit by Hillary Torilla, and she asks that our thoughts and prayer be with her brother's wife, Tess, who has inoperable cancer. Hillary is with them in Walnut Creek, California now, helping as best she can. So we also send our support to Hillary as she does the work of loving and caring for family in time of need. We light a candle sending our love and support to the Reverend Wyman Rousseau and Maya Williams. As many of you know, Maya has advanced inoperable cancer and Wyman advanced Parkinson's disease. They're glad to be back in San Miguel where they intend to live out their days, but they need our help to do so. Maya has told me how much she appreciates the work that our care team is doing for them. As a congregation, our ministry to those within our community is critically important. Many of you have also responded to help them with the financial challenges they have in getting the care they need. Thank you to those who've done so thus far, and I know you will continue to do so. We light a candle of best wishes for you, Tomlinson, who will be having some surgery tomorrow. We light a candle in memory of Ted Englander, whose memorial service will be on March 26. There's information on the civil list. It'll be here at the Hotel Aldea, and that's all I have, but keep that date in mind for those of you who knew Ted. We light our blue candle, blue and yellow candle, for all the lives lost, all the people displaced, all the people suffering, all the destruction that has taken place and the unprovoked and unjust war in Ukraine. And then we light our other large candle for peace in the Middle East, for the millions suffering, especially the children, for the safe and swift release of all hostages, and for an end to the fighting and destruction. We light another candle for those joys, sorrows, and concerns held deep in our hearts, but which remain unspoken today. And we also will invite you later to come forward and light a candle on your own silently if you wish to do so. Finally, tomorrow, 2 different cultures celebrate the lives of national heroes. In both, people recognize the importance to their cultural identity of those who've come before them and whose lives are inspirations and examples to follow. Here in Mexico, folks celebrate Benito Juarez, who brought many political reforms to Mexico and its constitution. And so we light a candle in solidarity with our Mexican neighbors and celebrating the future of Mexico. And for those, many of you reminded me, that are from Irish or Celtic descent, we join you in celebrating St. Patrick's Day. And we light a candle to hold all of that culture together, and we do so concluding with these words, famous Irish prayer. May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. The rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand.
And I invite you now to join with me in a moment of prayer or contemplation, meditation, whatever is best for you. We begin by holding together all that we have heard, the joys, the sorrows, especially those that are unspoken, because we know that every person brings with them their own sorrows and joys, whether they are spoken or not. And when we hold together, we imagine ourselves simply giving support. We don't analyze. We try not to think of advice we might want to give somebody on their joys and sorrows. We simply hold together to imagine that we too are being held, supported, companioned in facing life which comes to every single one of us. And in our holding and in our breathing, remembering that we are being breathed by life. Let us bring to mind and into this circle all those who are struggling the most today. In Ukraine, in Israel, so many places in the world, for all of the people for whom today is a challenge, for those who are afraid, for those who are running, for those who are sick, for those who are in search of housing and food and shelter and work and companionship and love and respect and even sanity. For all those for whom today is a hard day, may we breathe in the breath that is given to us and breathe it out into the world, and remember that this is how love moves. It comes to us, it moves through us, and we send it out into the world to those who need it most. It comes to us, it expands us as we breathe in, and we send it out into the world to where it is needed most, including for ourselves. May we stay in the flow of that love as often as we can. May it be so. I'm going to invite you to share in singing a beautiful song. We sing it in our congregation in Spanish, Nada te turbe. It has words in it. It includes looking for support from God. I want to invite all of you to simply translate that idea, that word, to whatever you understand to be your source of support. It could be breath. It could be peace. It could be life itself that we are part of. Help yourself not get worried about a single word, because we are all part of this life. And so I invite you to remain seated and sing along. We'll sing it through about 3 times. Please harmonize if you'd like to. Nada te turbe, nada te espante, tiene Dios tiene, nada le falta, nada te turbe, nada te espante, solo Dios basta. Now add some harmony. Nada te turbe, nada te espante, tiene Dios tiene, nada le falta, nada te turbe, nada te espante, solo Dios basta. One final time. Nada te turbe, nada te espante. Well, I want to introduce these readings by giving a little background. When I was beginning in the Unitarian Universalist ministry more than 30 years ago, I wanted to be able to preach like Martin Luther King Jr. So you can imagine what a strange kind of thing that was for a young white person from the lower class American suburbs, not really attached to the African American tradition. But I was 10 when Martin Luther King died, when he was murdered, and since then his life and his teachings have had a very large effect on me. So let me give you these readings and then I'll say more in a minute. So both of the readings, all of the readings are from a beautiful new book titled Brothers in the Beloved Community by Reverend Mark Andrus, who is an Episcopal priest who is just retiring, I think, from a diocese in California, and he has been also very interested in the readings, the writings of Martin Luther King, and he has gone to study with Thich Nhat Hanh before Thich Nhat Hanh died, and he's put together this beautiful record of their relationship. African American Christianity, personalistic theology and philosophy, Gandhian nonviolence, European and American labor organizing strategies, and the tactics of pacifism. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. mixed all of these and turned them into a powerful amalgam that he then successfully enacted in mass movements, boycotts, and strikes, leading American people in doing something after they organized. Behind King's operational genius, we can see a rare mind at work, that of the synthesizer. Most scholars focus on one field. Far rarer are scholars who weave together strands from different disciplines. And it is often from such weaving that a new paradigm, a truer picture of reality emerges. King was such a synthesizer. Rarest of all, however, is the scholar who can move from the realm of the theoretical into activism, as King did. And then this. The morning after hearing the news, Thich Nhat Hanh wrote a heartbroken letter to their mutual friend, Raphael Gould of the Fellowship of Reconciliation. He said, "I did not sleep last night. They killed Martin Luther King. They killed us. I am afraid the root of violence is so deep in the heart and mind and manner of this society. They killed him. They killed my hope. I do not know what to say. He made so great an impression on me. This morning I have the impression that I cannot bear the loss." Years later, Thich Nhat Hanh recalled, "I was in New York when I heard the news of his assassination, and I was devastated. I could not eat. I could not sleep. I made a deep vow to continue building what he called the beloved community, not only for myself, but for him also. I have done what I promised to Martin Luther King Jr., and I think that I have always felt his support." We have a video of an interview with Thich Nhat Hanh 7 or 8 years ago with Oprah Winfrey.
And exactly 1 year after, June the 1st, 66, I met him in Chicago. And we had that discussion about peace, freedom, and community. And we agreed with that without a community, we cannot go very far.
How long was the discussion with him?
45 minutes or so. Mm-hmm. And after that, there was a press conference, and he came out very strongly against the war in Vietnam.
Do you think that that was a result of your conversation with him?
I believe so. Mm-hmm. And after that, we continue our work. And the last time I met him was in Geneva, during a peace conference called La Paz en Interes.
There's an interesting story from that I heard, that you were running late. Can you tell me that story?
Martin Luther King invited me up for breakfast to talk over these issues again, and I was caught in a press conference downstairs. I came late. He kept the breakfast warm for me. And during the conversation, I was able to tell him that the people in Vietnam call him a bodhisattva, enlightened being, because of what he was doing for his people, his country, for the world.
And the fact that he was doing it non-violently.
Yes, that is the work of a bodhisattva, of a Buddha, of an enlightened person, always with compassion and non-violence. And when I heard of his assassination, I could not believe it. I thought that the American people have produced king, but are not capable of preserving him. I was a little bit angry at that time. I did not eat, I did not sleep.
So I have a practice, and I've been doing this for almost 30 years. Every year, on the anniversary of the birth of Martin Luther King, I begin about a month of reading. I read his sermons, I read his essays, I read his books. I continue to read. I haven't read everything yet. The older I get, the more I understand some things. Having learned only 15, 20 years ago to understand the extent to which white supremacy is the way that the United States was organized from the beginning, it has been an ongoing education and a source of inspiration for me. And more I remind myself that Martin Luther King Jr. was 39 years old when he was murdered. 39 years old. And what he brought into the world is incredible. He was, in so many ways, a genius. And he was a completely human person, of course. He struggled too. So I begin by asking folks in my congregation at home, especially in February, what have you been reading for Black History Month? I know it's over now, but every month is Black History Month, a chance to learn more of all the histories of the world. So I'll ask you, what have you read this year about the history of non-white people anywhere? What have you learned this year? It's an ongoing education we should continue to do. So this year, what I did was I began to listen to some of the speeches of Martin Luther King. I've heard some before. The famous one on the March for Washington, of course, people are familiar with, but I found and listened to his acceptance speech for the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. So he would have been 35 years old at the time, and it did not have any of the passion. He was so formal and reserved, but the words, of course, were so strong. And that gave me the idea of, since I knew that he had then, a couple years later, nominated Thich Nhat Hanh for the Nobel Peace Prize, I decided I wanted to look a little more at the relationship between these two. So Martin Luther King was liberal in his theology in some ways. In fact, one of my colleagues in the UU ministry who worked in somewhere in the South knew Martin Luther King and his wife Coretta Scott King, in fact, and he said that Coretta Scott King told him once, well, I was very interested in the Unitarians. But Martin was a Baptist, and so I became a Baptist. But the thing was, one of the things Martin Luther King said was that for all of the beautiful, practically liberal theological ideas, Unitarians were not quite able to deal with the facts of evil in the world in a way that was anything more than anything intellectual. That was not where he imagined that you could draw the resources needed to really live in a world of evil. So King, like some of his mentors before him, worked with a concept that had been articulated by an American philosopher, Josiah Royce, who lived until 1916. He was an idealist philosopher, Royce. And he came up with this idea of beloved community. In 1913, he said this: "My life means nothing, either theoretically or practically, unless I am a member of a community. Beloved community is made up of all those dedicated to the causes of loyalty and truth." This was a radical idea for the unity of all humanity. My life means nothing unless I am a member of a community. So for the last few years, decade or so in Unitarian Universalism, we have been using this terminology of beloved community, and I think we use it too easily. We claim it for ourselves, as in, we are the beloved community. Let's be the beloved community. However, for anyone who comes into a congregation or a circle claiming to be beloved community, if they don't truly feel welcomed or seen or supported, if they don't truly feel it, then they think, what's wrong with me? If this is such the beloved community, what about me? So we have to be so careful about being a little too self-congratulatory. And this is the work of the spiritual life. This is the work of the spiritual life. I think that in order to try to create beloved community, that is a call worth answering and working on for as long as we can. But we have to be careful not to think we have arrived and we simply offer it to the world. So what Martin Luther King and Thich Nhat Hanh brought to this idea of beloved community is in fact quite profound. They met twice. The first time in Chicago, they were invited by Raphael Gould, who was one of the administrators of the Fellowship of Reconciliation. They met for 45 minutes, after which they had a press conference. But leading up to this, Thich Nhat Hanh was in the United States. Remember, the United States was at war with Vietnam. And Thich Nhat Hanh was already changing his traditional Buddhist community and practice by saying that when everyone around us is suffering, we cannot simply remain in our monasteries. We have to go out and see what good we can do to alleviate suffering. He called it engaged Buddhism. So he was already a little bit suspect. But in his tradition, the tradition of living from such deep compassion, I don't know how much you know about the story of the Buddha, but the idea is that after his sitting for days and days under the Bodhi tree, when his mind pierced the bubble of reality and he understood the nature of the universe and how things fit together, he came out basically saying, if you do this, and you cannot not be compassionate. It's not a choice. It's not just an idea. When you recognize how things are interrelated, you cannot not be compassionate. So in his tradition, and especially at that time, there were several monks from his community who, in acts of extreme devotion to the idea of compassion, to try to bring to awareness for the United States and for the leaders of their country how horrible this war was. Several monks set themselves on fire. And in the United States, it was seen as maybe the suicide of martyrs. But as Mark Andrus tries to point out, in the tradition, this is dedication. Such dedication to the highest ideals of compassion, that these were not acts made of despair and of wanting to simply be out of the world, but of giving one's life to the ideals of compassion. So when Thich Nhat Hanh, he wrote a letter to Martin Luther King and said, you have the attention of many of the American people. I see that you are trying to do the same thing, trying to raise in people the sense of compassion. I don't know if you remember or have some of the things that impressed me as an adult, watching videos of white people, especially, for example, in the suburbs of Chicago, when Martin Luther King visited Chicago, young white men saying things like, if I get my hands on him, I will tear him limb to limb. The incredible brutality of American racism. It wasn't just the political system. It denied the humanity of the people who were involved in so many ways. So when Thich Nhat Hanh wrote a letter to Martin Luther King, especially after these self-immolations had happened, he said, I understand you have the attention of the American people. Will you speak out against this war? And so they met for 45 minutes, and then they held a press conference, and they wrote a joint statement condemning the war in Vietnam. So for Martin Luther King to take that risk, he was already, of course, under surveillance by the FBI as a dangerous person. To take that risk to also criticize his government in that way was just to add risk on top of risk, to speak against the war in Vietnam. So I want to go back and say again, Martin Luther King was 37 when they met. Thich Nhat Hanh was 40. They both lived from a source that was so deep that they could not do otherwise. This was not a choice simply to be strategic or to be popular or to be a leader or to be powerful. They lived from a source so deep that they could not do otherwise. Martin Luther King would call that source God. Thich Nhat Hanh would call that source the source of life, the source of compassion. It's the same thing. We are all part of it. But generally speaking, most of us let our egos get in the way, and we do not let that call us forward out of our comfort zones, out of our materialism, out of our sense that, whoa, but this is the life I worked for, and I have all these things, and I'm being successful. I think of these young men who found themselves facing choices that maybe we don't get called to face, or maybe we do, but they were willing to enter into that call from life. They had the courage to let that life or love, Martin Luther King referred to it often as agape love, not romantic love, not eros, not just friendship, but the kind of love which is overflowing, which is non-conditional. And Mark Andrus points out a beautiful thing. He said, many people in many traditions have said, this is what the center of life is, and we are in it, and it is in all of us, that life source. You could simply call it breath. This is a practice, day by day, recognizing that we are given breath. We are breathed by life. We do not make our living. We don't make ourselves. We are breathed by life. And some people, like Martin Luther King Jr., call that love. The universe is the source of life. That source of life is breathing us constantly. And so they settled both of them in. And the fascinating thing is, in meeting only twice, they recognized it in one another. Do you know the beautiful Hindu greeting, namaste? Which basically means, I see the divine in you. I honor the divine in you. I imagine that when they met, this was what happened. They recognized that they were working from a similar source, and they had similar things to say. And then, when Martin Luther King died and Thich Nhat Hanh was devastated and trying to understand, this society, or North American society, that could produce a king, and as he said, was unable to preserve him. Thich Nhat Hanh went on to describe, by teaching, for the rest of his life, mindfulness, compassion, that the beloved community, drawing from this source of life, goes beyond death. He said often, Martin Luther King, I felt he was with me always for the rest of my life. Life itself is moving through us. We are not the source of life. It moves through us. We come and go. But life itself remains. And that's what Thich Nhat Hanh was trying to say. And that's what Martin Luther King was trying to say. That source of love. In the Christian tradition, Jesus says that is the kind of love that casts out fear. And we tend to not pay too much attention to that. We operate with our fears, we get angry that we have fears, we externalize those fears and blame them on other people that make us angry and afraid, but rarely do we imagine. Can you imagine that source of love which lives you enough that it could cast out fear? That's what I think these two men, who were both small in stature, this is how I imagine them, as spiritual and moral giants. They're willing to be led by the love that they knew they were a part of. Martin Luther King wrote a beautiful sermon titled, "The Strength to Love." What does it mean to be a member of a community? Beginning with a community like this, but moving out into the entire world. Martin Luther King called it the world house. Thich Nhat Hanh called it being a citizen of the world, and he included all living beings. The Buddhist tradition, all sentient beings. What does it mean to understand yourself as a member of the community of the world? I say in my congregation to new members, one of the things we offer to you, and sometimes I will say I expect, but not harshly, is that you take your religious life seriously. That you take your religious and spiritual life seriously. And if you don't like the word religion, then say spirituality. That's fine with me. It's a simplistic difference, but the life of following and being grateful for the life that flows in us, the breath that is given to us day by day by day, the spiritual life, for wherever it leads us, even to the expense of our own lives. Could we even imagine that? Martin Luther King and Thich Nhat Hanh did imagine it. King died for it. Thich Nhat Hanh lived until a few years ago. He was 95 when he died, but he was exiled from his home for nearly 40 years before he could go back. They let that love lead them. Wouldn't it be amazing in this world which feels like it is so broken and so horrible, which we would love to blame on everything and everyone else? Wouldn't it be amazing to simply say, let me follow where love is leading me? The meeting of these two giants will continue to inspire me for a long time, and I hope maybe it will begin to inspire you as well. May it be so.
Thich Nhat Hanh speaks of generosity, saying, "Give generously so as to discover abundance." He explains, there's a kind of vegetable in Vietnam called hay. It belongs to the onion family, and it looks like a scallion, and it's very good in soup. The more you cut the hay plants at the base, the more they grow. But if you don't cut them, they won't grow very much. But if you cut them often, they get bigger and bigger. This is also true of the practice of generosity. If you give and continue to give, you become richer and richer all the time, richer in terms of happiness and well-being. This may seem strange, but it is always true. Please give generously, and your hay will grow and multiply as you discover abundance. The offering will now be collected and gratefully received.
If you're able and willing, I invite you to rise in body or spirit to share in singing the closing song number, well, the words will be on the screen. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day. We'll sing it twice. think we should take you all on the road to sing. You're a beautiful choir. And now as we get ready to go out of this circle, this time, this place together, back out into the world which needs every single one of us, remember to keep alert to the way things truly are within you and around you. Be firm in your faith. Be courageous. Be strong as often as you can. And take a breath and help yourself start again today to try to let all that you do be done in love. Go in peace.